the opportunity to continue doing what we love to do got taken away. Like in our minds, it was almost like done. Part of maybe the motivating factor was to show what it looks like to like be rock bottom and dust yourself off and get up and do it again.
In 1996, a 19-year-old in Agoura Hills, California, with an eye for design and an ear for music, had an idea. Obsessed with art and classically trained as a pianist, Mike Shinoda heard classic rock samples in the hip-hop he loved and became transfixed with the potential of combining his love of rap with his love of heavy metal. The band he co-founded, Linkin Park, became one of the most popular and influential groups of the 2000s, cementing Shinoda's leading role in convergence culture. And it all started with one idea.
(201) take one.
Mike, welcome to Idea Generation.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, it's our honor. I wanted to talk to you about collaboration. When I look at sort of the breadth of your career, that is one of the sort of most significant through lines and something that it appears you have mastered. What is, in your estimation, the key to a successful collaboration?
Well, I think I'm lucky in the sense that I grew up, drawing and painting and making music in a way that was a little more solitary. Like I make my thing and I finish it. When I first got together, I had a really good friend that I've known since I was about 13, and his name's Mark, and he and I started a band called Xero, and Xero became basically Hybrid Theory, which became Linkin Park. During that time when I was like starting, to work with him, I was like making a couple like beats for friends who rapped, and Mark and I were doing stuff with like rock music, and then I went to college. And I went to college for illustration. In art school, there's a lot of criticism. It's part of the process of being in school for art is that you make things, and then the instructor and your classmates critique them, and you all give each other criticism. And so, with those two things going on, like the band going on and the school going on, where there's a lot of collaboration and constructive criticism, sometimes with good intentions, sometimes not. At least I got much better at hearing criticism and building ideas with people. The most important idea I've ever had is probably more of a realization than an idea, just the realization that like sometimes I can't do it on my own, that like needing help and asking for help is like kind of like there's an honor in that and also like a wisdom in that.
You mentioned growing up, drawing, obviously playing piano as well, and pursuing sort of a myriad of creative arts.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how did your parents' professional life inform your sort of career ambitions?
They were from very different backgrounds. My mom is from rural Appalachia in the hills. They grew tobacco on a farm. Their nearest neighbor was like a mile down a dirt road. My dad was first generation Japanese born in the US. His father immigrated over from Japan, and they were interned in World War II. He ended up going to school and becoming an engineer, and he worked in the space program and aerospace and like space shuttle space. He literally worked on rockets and the space shuttle itself. My mom ended up working doing like paperwork and stuff like that. She was more of like a secretary assistant type of position, and she met my dad there. And she eventually became a court reporter. The reason I say all that is I have my dad's like engineering kind of brain, and my mom, when she got into court reporting, there's a lot of medical background she had to learn, and a lot of English and grammar. And so those things kind of, she supported those things with us. Like if we use bad punctuation or bad grammar on something, she'd call us out immediately.
Were there any sort of influences in your immediate family or sort of friend circles that kind of opened your eyes to the possibilities of a career in the creative arts?
I just grew up drawing. Like I was drawing from the moment I could hold a pencil, and my mom and dad figured out very quickly that if they went out to dinner and they just gave me something to draw with, that I'd be occupied for any amount of time. They could sit and have dinner with their friends for 2 hours, 3 hours even, and I'd be fine. So that was just a part of my life all throughout my childhood, and it was actually the thing that I thought I would be doing for a living.
We are somewhat contemporaries, about the same age, and in the late 80s, early 90s, I would say music in particular, culture generally, was much more balkanized than it is today. And growing up, for me it was like, I listened to De La and Tribe and Nas and Wu-Tang, and that was a thing. And then there were the kids that listened to Nirvana and Sonic Youth and Lemonheads or whatever. Obviously, you were able to pull from a myriad of different inspirations, again, in an environment where that was not something that was, sort of lionized in the way that it would later become. How did those ideas sort of come into focus for you?
I was always just drawn to a lot of different things. Like I was like what you're describing. Like I remember in one of my classes, it was an art class. My friends at my table, we were hip hop kids, and that's what we listened to. And there were some kids who were rock kids, and they sat at a different table, and they wore Metallica tees, and we hated each other, just on the music. I mean, it wasn't that deep. Like we weren't like fighting or whatever physically, but we would make fun of each other. We wouldn't hang out. We would not associate because the music was the divider. Eventually, I just naturally heard things. I heard things that were bridges, that were connectors. Like it started with Beastie Boys sampling Zeppelin and Hendrix. Because I didn't just like listen to the Beastie Boys record and memorize that and move on to the Run DMC record and blah, blah, blah. I heard those samples and I realized, oh, that's The Ocean by Zeppelin. That's When the Levee Breaks by Zeppelin. And a little while later, bands like Rage and Chili Peppers, and there was a soundtrack called Judgment Night. Do you ever remember that?
With Adele and Dinosaur Jr.
Right, so like that had Helmet and House of Pain together on it. And stuff like that, I was like, this is it, man. I love whatever this is. These are these guys like what I like. This is the kind of music that I'm listening to. And once you start thinking about that, you can just realize there's so many ways to blend it. My biggest early supporter, I had a piano teacher from when I was like 3, 4, 5-ish, for about 12 years. And at a certain point, I was learning classical theory, all the basics. And at one point when I really fell in love with hip hop, I was learning about jazz, I was learning about blues, some rock. And I told my teacher I wanted to learn those things, in particular jazz. And my teacher said, well, I think you should actually quit lessons. And I can't teach you that. And actually what you really want to do is you want to start making things. And so you should probably look into buying that type of gear and learning how to use it. And it was one of the most selfless, sweet, honorable things that she could have done. Like she basically was saying she was willing to lose a client, lose her, whatever that's worth to her every month, in order for this kid to pursue their dreams and get, figure it out. It's an incredible way to be.
Do you remember writing the first song where you felt like you had found this sort of balance of almost songwriting with the density of rap music, but with hooks that had echoes of a Metallica or, you
Oh,
know?
I can tell you that off of Hybrid Theory, the song that I've always, I think the whole band pretty much thinks was like that thing is Papercut, the very first track off the very first record. The reason it's there, the reason that's the first song, is because it really contains the basics of everything that Linkin Park is. Like in the rhythms, in the way the drums and the samples and the guitars are treated, the rapping, the hookiness, and then it ends with big melodies. And it's manages to be like high energy, but also introspective, right? Because a lot of stuff that was coming out at that time was very much like, we called it frat rock. Like it was aggressive and macho and whatever. And we were like, yeah, there's a time for that. Some stuff that we made, it like leans into that a little bit, but mostly not, usually not. Usually our stuff was more introspective.
What was the process to get from, you know, forming Xero and to getting to Papercut? Like, how many songs did you have to make? You know, I know that the group lineup switched up along the way.
Yeah, originally the band, I mean, Xero started with just me and my friend Mark, and he was the one playing like Rage Against the Machine and stuff for me. Like he introduced me to some of those bands, and I introduced him to Wu-Tang and so on. And we were making demos back then we started off making joke songs because we didn't take ourselves seriously enough to like make real songs. But that's the thing, is I think that was really valuable to us because we could make things and experiment and get better at it without the pressure of like you're like saying something serious or whatever.
And then you added Chester into the mix and swapped out a different singer?
So yeah, so our singer at the time, he went into management and we found Chester. Chester came in through a mutual friend, and it wasn't long. I mean, the steps to get from that point to our first album, like we showcased for every label. They all turned us down, and we ended up just going with our A&R guy. He had taken a job at Warner, and they okayed us to like do some demos and see, you know, it's almost like a show us what you got kind of deal.
How did you deal with the series of rejections, and were you guys of the mind that like, oh, they don't get it, or was it demoralizing?
I'm sure it would make a better movie script, like screenplay, if it was like, we were all like, it's the only thing we got. We're all in on this music shit. But the truth is that our band, like everybody was smart and everybody had other things going on. Like, you know, we had jobs and whatever, and if it didn't work out, we would be okay. I think when people are thinking of good ideas and bad ideas, sometimes they're using a metric, like they're judging it based on like, is it gonna be successful? Or are other people gonna like this idea? And at least for my art and for my music, the best metric is really how much I like it or how much it moves me. Like I think we can get fooled sometimes by chasing after things that we think other people are gonna like, because a lot of other people are gonna like this idea, so it's good. Not necessarily, like I always say the worst thing that could happen would be for a lot of people to like a song of mine that I don't like.
What was the dynamic and sort of the internal politics of the band in that early stage?
I just remember everybody being really like focused on the next, on like the craft and the next thing. Back then, everybody was spending a lot of time playing shows. Like they would be playing shows every weekend, or every other weekend. We play shows like every other month because we were spending the whole time writing new songs and rehearsing and getting better. So we spent a lot more time on ourselves and on our foundation than just like trying to get fans.
How would you say that the sort of ideas of what the band was going to be sort of evolved or changed between like signing day and turning in Hybrid Theory?
Well, when we got like signed, it was really like basically like a development deal. Like it was like a wait and see kind of situation. I don't think we really knew that when we signed it. I wasn't fully aware that that's what was going on. So the more we recorded, the more we wrote, the more we recorded, and honestly, the more we stuck to our guns and said, because there were we would get suggestions from the label about doing things differently. And usually we told them no.
What were the kinds of suggestions that were?
Hey, you should meet with this producer. Hey, you should. On the funny side, there was one time that A&R guy asked us to, because we were still getting comfortable on stage and working out like that part of things, and he had us meet with this guy who like choreographed and helped with stage stuff on like these like rap and R&B shows. And this dude comes in and he's like basically a choreographer, and I literally suggested, he's like, you need to have like a thing on stage, like a gimmick where, like, for example, like you could like come up to the microphone and like step out to the side and step out of your shoes, or like kick a shoe off. We were like, what the fuck? That was a literal suggestion. And he was, I don't mean to make it sound like he's a crazy person. Like he was just shooting from the hip. Like that was just something that popped into his head. But like a real thing that happened was like, as we finished Hybrid Theory, we were like, the person who is going to mix Hybrid Theory is Andy Wallace. Andy Wallace mixed these records over here that blend samples and rock music and industrial sounds in a way that feels modern to us. It's very full, it's expert level mixing. Like we love this. And he also, by the way, mixed like Nirvana's Nevermind. He's an icon. Like he does huge records too. He's the only one who can mix Hybrid Theory. And the next thing we knew, like our A&R guy had done a test mix with somebody else. And it was because of politics and stuff going on his side. And we were scared to death that this guy was going to just like take our record and go do his own thing with it, and they were going to put it out that way. So those were the places where we had to like put our foot down and have like difficult conversations with people and fight for our own vision.
In 2000, Linkin Park released its debut album, Hybrid Theory, immediately catapulting the band to superstardom. Over the next decade and a half, Shinoda helped push the group to expand its sonic palette while also helming high-profile collaborations and a solo album. But the 2017 death of beloved singer Chester Bennington would put the future of Linkin Park in doubt. You turn in Hybrid Theory, and I'm curious sort of what were your and your bandmates' expectations in that moment? Like, what did you really think was going to happen next?
We thought we were just looking at it like, okay, now we've got to go on tour, support the record, promote it. It's going to be fun. Love going out and playing shows. They picked a single. They picked One Step Closer, and then that's going to come out, and we'll see how it goes. And it came out, and it caught fire immediately. It went really big on alternative radio at a time when alternative radio was maybe like leading pop radio. Like things were crossing over from alternative to pop all the time, which is not happening now so much.
You feed it into the machine that is the label, and would you say that they were helpful in orchestrating that break?
Here's a really important thing to know. So yeah, they had a really good team in place, incredible team. And when the album came out, it was about to come out, we were talking, just the band, we were talking about like what do you think a good first week would be for like, what should we expect, And our best number was about 12,000 units sold, which would be high. It would be big for a brand new band to come out and sell 12. And I think we ended up in the 40s, 45-ish. Blew our minds. Like, it blew everybody's minds. Like, everyone was paying attention. Then all of a sudden, the bands that we were playing with, some of the bands that we were playing first out of 3, and the bands are treating us all bad because they're like mad that we're doing so well. It was funny. It was a funny time.
And how quickly did all of your lives completely flip on their heads?
I think we were had our heads down and we were working really hard and very focused. So we weren't aware of it. And we actually went straight from Hybrid Theory into Meteora with very little break. Like some things were happening in our lives that were changing, but we weren't spending a lot of downtime to absorb them. So, you know, guys were buying like their first nice car, maybe buying a house. It was intense, but the music, the career was going so fast that we didn't even pay attention to it. And it wasn't until after the second album that we took a break intentionally. Everybody said like, we're tired and we gotta like recalibrate our lives, and we gotta recalibrate our creative vision and see what the right next step is. Because the first two, we can't do three. Like if the next record is like just riding the momentum of the first two, then we're gonna be stuck. It's gonna like bottleneck like our capability, like our potential as a band.
I'm curious, going to that second record, was there a feeling that you were just simply creatively in the zone, or was there a sense of stakes and, you know, a pressure?
Yeah, the stakes, there were stakes. It was high stakes. So Hybrid Theory first record was the biggest record on the planet that year. And that was a year when it was like Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera and Justin Timberlake and NSYNC or whatever. I don't remember exactly all of the ones that were in the conversation at the time. But we saw them as like huge pop artists. We didn't see ourselves that way at all. And when we got the data back or the results back of like, they're saying, you add up all the numbers, like you guys are bigger than them on the planet Earth. And we were like, that doesn't make any sense. So to go from that to, okay, now let's make another record is terrifying. But luckily, I think we were so in the groove and we were just working so hard that it didn't have time to sneak into our heads too much. Like we just kept working. And the result was we found a way to continue the creative direction of the first record and open it up enough that we could say, okay, like first record was very alternative, rock, hip hop, like it was a statement record. And then the next one we added these homemade samples, we added electronic bits. We had a song called Nobody's Listening that was basically a rap song. We had a song called Breaking the Habit, which didn't have any distorted guitars on it, and it was a big single for us. So it's like, okay, we proved to everybody, like we can make a song without traditional rock elements in it that performs well, right? That does well in the marketplace. Like that was the part that I think was a big success for us, like as artists. Pivoting is hard. Change is hard. So, you know, if somebody's wondering like, how do I know when to change directions? Or even like, how do I know when to stop? Like, when is something done? Those things come with experience and age. I do it all the time when I'm working on things. If I'm working on an album, especially from song to song, I might make something one day where I go, this is the best thing I've ever made. And then I wake up the next day and I hate it. And then a couple weeks later, it's like I make something else and I go, this changes everything in this whole album. Everything about this project needs to move closer to this new thing I just discovered. And yeah, it's like, I feel like with change, with pivoting, like the more often you do it, the better you get at it. And doing it is hard, but once you get used to the discomfort of change, then you get better at it when it happens.
And you're saying that then going into the third, there was a feeling that you had to sort of reapproach the strategy?
Yeah. So after the second record, we took a step back. I did a record called Fort Minor to get out of my system like this is the hip hop. It was almost like this is the hip hop I grew up on and how I would do it today at that time. We had already done Collision Course with Jay-Z.
Tell me how exactly did that
In short, MTV asked Jay to do mashup. Who do you want to do it with? He said Linkin Park. We said, I said, here are 3 mashups. Like, that was our response. He said, do you want to do it? And I sent back 3 mashups, and he responded back, oh shit. And then everybody knew, like, this was a thing. And we ended up playing, first we did that record, I produced it and assembled it using like his Black album. They did acapellas and instrumentals.
You had the stems, right?
And and I used our stems and whatever, and I had actually grown up making mashups. They didn't actually know that, but I had grown up making mashups. It's like how I learned to do music, so it was easy for me. It was second nature for me, and that came through in the process. We got to play the Grammys with Jay and Paul McCartney, and we won a Grammy for that. Then I did Fort Minor. Jay executive produced that.
What does that mean to have him executive producing?
It was great. I mean, it was really, his insight was very like high level. He wasn't super involved in the day to day, but he did help me kind of like direct it from that high level. I think the thing that actually was the most exciting to me were the guest appearances on it. Like to get like the verse that Black Thought did on the song Right Now, that's maybe my favorite Black Thought verse, and top 10 Black Thought verses to me, and to have it on my project is crazy. Like I just think he's, such an incredible artist. But yeah, I had Common on there, John Legend, of course Styles of Beyond, Holly Brook, who became Skylar Grey, and many others. And then, like, I think just coming out of that, Chester did a project called Dead by Sunrise, and then we kind of took a little break, and then when we approached the next Linkin Park album, it was like, I mean, there's so much to talk about there, but I think the most important thing was like, the reason I felt like I had to do a Fort Minor record is because I felt like certain things didn't belong. I got the impression from the other guys, like certain things didn't belong in Linkin Park. Like we do a very specific thing, and everybody was saying at that point, like, look how great this stuff you guys were doing is. Like, there should never be a thing that you can't do in Linkin Park. It's all welcome. So the next record became this patchwork. It took us a very long time to get there, but it became this patchwork of all of these different sounds. And on the record, you could hear from song to song, everything was very different from the last thing.
My biggest advantage as a creator or entrepreneur. You know what, I'd say probably my biggest advantage is my point of view. The way I see things. And I think that's true for a lot of people who are, successful at what they do. But I have, we all have a story. I have my own personal path that got me here, and it informs me all the time in the decisions I make. And I work hard to enhance my knowledge base. Yeah, I'm always trying to learn. I'm always trying to get better at it. And I do have a point of view.
Just to dial back, like, you are a songwriter, you are a rapper. You approach things from a very lyrically dense and narrative-driven place a lot of times. I'm curious, how do you sort of balance finding inspiration for the next song? And also, as you've gotten older and marriage and children and all of these things, are there lines of where you can let people in or not?
It does change in the sense that as your family grows or you get older, like your priorities change, and like the way you want to, like your interests change. Like the things I'm drawn to have changed over time. So like a few albums ago, it was like the heaviest, loudest, most complicated stuff we could make. And then the album after that was like basically a pop record. So, like in terms of like what I want to do and what I want to get out of it is different. Completely separate from that, we're at a very interesting time in our band as individuals because we experienced a great loss, and the opportunity to continue doing what we love to do got taken away. Like in our minds, it was almost like done. And there's nothing any of us could do to hide that. Like other people may have even felt it like nobody could feel it as bad as we could feel it. Like it's gonna be the worst for us. But they were feeling it too. They're feeling their version of it and feeling bad. And I thought, like for us in this year and in this effort, part of maybe the motivating factor was to, you mentioned family, like to lead by example, to show what it looks like to like be like rock bottom and dust yourself off and get up and do it again and go. The only way to get that across would be to actually do it and do it, you know, do it well or do it honorably or do it like in a way that like, you know, shows your kids like a good example of it, I thought.
After the passing of his longtime friend and collaborator, Shinoda began to process his grief, first with a solo recording addressing his sorrow, and later by working with new creative partners. Ultimately, a conversation with another Linkin Park bandmate paved the way for the group's triumphant rebirth. What role did the solo record serve in sort of recalibrating you and obviously, you know, I guess eventually creating the space for you to be able to revisit this?
Yeah. It was so I did a record called Post Traumatic. It was really just a diary. It was a musical like diary of that period of time. You know, kind of like if you listen to the record, it starts off very, very dark. And then by the end of it, it's lighter. Mm-hmm. It like isn't, like it's not all better, but it's like, it's lighter, a lot lighter. And that's how I felt. Went on tour with that and did a bunch of shows, and those shows were really intended to be like a place for the fans to commune and to see that I'm still here, like to see in person that, you know, all hope is not lost kind of thing, to make it way more like dramatic than it needs to be. But some people did feel that way. Like some people felt very dramatic. They felt very strong feelings, and I did want to like show up for them and for myself in person and do shows, you know, that address this stuff head on.
Being a producer, it's a very broad range. It can mean a broad range of things, from the Pete Rocks and the premieres that are banging on the machines, yes, to the, you know, Rick Rubin's,
yes,
asking.
It's unfortunate questions. That those are the same, that they get grouped into the same word, producer. It's really not the same. There are, like, just within the realm of like, so like if for a premiere, a DJ premiere or a Pete Rock, like it's the track, more so than like even a Timbaland who is arranging the hook and the shape of the vocals and giving feedback on the shape. And then a big step over into somebody like, Rick Rubin can do those things, but he exists much more now in this other bucket, which is completely different. Rick doesn't push any buttons. He doesn't know how to work that gear. He doesn't care about it, because really his value in the studio has nothing to do with those. Like you're gonna be much better off if somebody else does those things, because Rick's value is about the big picture, ideas, direction, artistic vision, and voice, like the concept of voice, not the literal voice. In working with him on, what did we do, 3 records with him? He suggested a chord once. It was the 3rd measure of the chorus of Waiting for the End. I can tell you exactly what it was. It was the only time. He doesn't do that. Yeah, but to go backwards, you were asking about like, you know, producers and things like that. Like my role, the way I ended up in my role producing this record, for example, has been through learning from the folks, really great folks that we've worked with getting confident enough, knowing my way around an album enough through working under great people, that I could feel like I could take it on because I know that I would do a good job. Don't let it be driven by ego, let it be driven by like what I can deliver.
Do I doubt myself? I doubt myself all the time. And I think this moment, actually, this year with Linkin Park kind of like restarting is a really great, for me, it's a very proud moment. It's a feeling of success just in the fact that the band was like, it was stopped. It was blocked. It was like, it wasn't going anywhere. And we were able through, hard work and perseverance and good ideas, and a lot of support from really great people who we love, who also had good ideas and put in the work. We were able to, dust ourselves off and try again.
Would you guys like to hear a new song? Something off the new album? Something we haven't played yet?
I think this is the time to do it.
You've touched on, obviously, the gravity of deciding to try to re-engage Linkin Park and to make new music with a new lineup. And what was your sort of path of coming to feel okay with this and then confident in it?
So I met Emily in 2019. I met Colin around 2021. And then sometime in probably 22, 23-ish, I remembered having like a breakfast with Joe Hahn, and he and I, like we've kept in touch, but he had like moved to Hawaii. Like we weren't seeing each other that often, and we had this really great conversation about what if the band, if there's 100 things to solve to make Linkin Park work again, all unsolved. Like at the end of all of that, what if it's like barely viable enough that we'd be like, I don't know, all traveling together in a van, right? Like if it was just the smallest thing it can be, that the idea that, is it really about the music? Is it really about the brotherhood and the like getting it together for the right reasons? I think I said, like, what if we all had to share a bus and like play like midday on a festival lineup and whatever, which is like a respectable way to be, but like for us that would be very small compared to what we do. And he, without even blinking, was like, yeah, of course that'd be fine. Like, I'd love that. And he went on about like, the time we spend together and making great stuff. And it was so inspiring. Like he was so focused and he was so like centered. And I left that conversation just being like, oh, I think it's different. That felt way different than anything in recent years. And I talked to Dave, our bass player. I was like, hey, Joe and I had this thing, and he was really excited. And we started just resolving to spend more time together, even if we didn't play a single note. If we just sat around and just daydreamed about it, that would be okay. And it started there.
At what point did you propose adding Emily to the mix? And
oh, that came way later. I'd be like, yeah, we're just screwing around. Like, we're just gonna write today. There's gonna be a bunch of different people in the room. Some of them are gonna be from my band, but other people are not. And we're just gonna make cool stuff and see what happens. And sometimes, because there were no guardrails on it, it just went somewhere fucking terrible because we didn't establish like what it was for, because we didn't commit to what it was for. I didn't say anything about, officially anything. And I think I was feeling it a little bit, but I was curious and I didn't want to like push anybody in any direction. And then I think one of the other guys said, you know, what do you think about these two? Like, they seem to click with us better than the rest. And I was like, yeah, I think that's right.
When I was young, I thought success, you know, was the same thing that like most people think of. And then after, you know, we had our first album did better than anything we could have imagined. Like there literally couldn't have been a better outcome in terms of like numbers and things like that. And after that, I had to change my like calibration because it's not on its own, that type of success isn't going to be fulfilling. So it became a lot more about artistic expression and finding like almost like the true nature of a thing that you're making. Like if you're writing a lyric and you can capture the truth in that lyric, if it's just the truest or the realest or the most authentic thing that you can write or make or say, you know, that's a version for me. That's a version of success.
You know, you guys have a thing that people love very deeply and have, you know, huge amounts of emotional investment in. And I guess, you know, as the band has progressed, increasingly there's probably a tension between scratching the itch that you know that they want scratched and pushing things forward in a way that perhaps makes them uncomfortable, but is maybe more creatively fulfilling for you or ultimately more fulfilling for them.
Well, with the new album, with From Xero, that was the ultimate test of that. It was like, how do we, there are all of these different elements in play. There's, you know, people that loved our first two records and didn't love anything after that. There's people that were along for the entire ride and preferred the more adventurous stuff. There are people who are potential fans that have never liked the band, but with the new lineup, they would. There's also then the aspect of Chester and Rob who are not in the new lineup, and how do we treat that? How do we do it respectfully to them, for them? How do we do that while maintaining our new members, Emily and Colin, and lifting them up and giving them the best platform to succeed from? It was friggin' insane. That's just on the creative side. Not to mention then like things like marketing and album release and blah, blah, blah. Like it's been this like almost impossible puzzle of things to worry about.
Did you have anxiety going into this process?
Yeah. The whole time I was turning gray and losing hair. No, I there were definitely big moments when I was like, are we doing the right thing? Like, I don't know. But honestly, like, I think the music I feel like the music got me through it. Like, I feel like when we made this, as we were making the songs, every time I like really sat and I listened to what we were making, it felt reassuring. Like, it felt like, yeah, this has got the DNA of Linkin Park in it. Even though it's different, I know it's there. You don't have to, like, I don't have to guess. And so at the end of the day, the big question, like the challenge really was, how do we present it? I know it's there, but in order for someone else to realize it, they're gonna have to give it a chance. So how do we set up the best version of an invitation to come give it a chance?
Whether it was with Fort Minor or your own, you know, solo record in 2019, you have proven that you can do it on your own and that there's an appetite from the fans for that. I guess what was animating your wantedness to solve this very fraught emotionally and also, you know, potentially dangerous intellectual challenge?
The way the fan base reacted to it was the core fans of mine were very, like, excited about it. Like, there were people there who wanted it wanted to hear it and wanted me to keep doing it. But what I also realized is that there is a correlation between the like actual artistry and the actual like quality, in a sense, of the things that we would make together as a band. Like there's a magic to that. Part of that is the group, like the team, and the shared interest and the shared ideas and the camaraderie and the fun we have. All of those things. The scariest part about it is, okay, if we, you know, I know that that thing is special, and I've done it with, and I've tried to do it with people that are not Linkin Park, and forget like the audience at large's reaction to it. I listen to it and I go, it's missing something. It's not all there. Like I don't, it doesn't come out of me the way that the like right way. And part of it is just because I've got a shorthand, I've got a like a understanding, a creative like chemistry with my bandmates that I don't have with anybody else. It's natural, it's effortless. Well, not effortless, but easier. and that is, it's almost like I did my, you ever heard about like Aboriginal people like doing a walkabout? Mm-hmm. I did my walkabout, I saw things, and I came back and I went, yeah, this thing where I started, this thing is unique. I thought it was unique. That was a guess. And now I've walked all over and I realized that I didn't see it anywhere else. And I saw great things. I saw people that are incredible. But when I do it with them, it's not incredible. And when I come here, it's incredible.